President Trump obviously has been cleared of collusion. There was never any collusion. And he's been cleared of obstruction, which was the fake crime they tried to manufacture once they quickly realized, or they knew from the get-go there was no collusion, so they tried to manufacture a fake crime of obstruction. That went nowhere. So the question is, what's going to be done about the corrupt players that abuse their powers to target President Trump and other innocents? And one of the most corrupt of those players, in my view, is former FBI Director James Comey, who was rightly fired by President Trump in 2017. Now, Mr. Comey was an anti-Trumper, it was pretty clear. And after he was fired, his anti-Trumpism reached a fever pitch. And it got so bad that he used memos that weren't his, that were the FBI's, essentially President Trump's FBI files. He leaked them through a friend to the New York Times with the express hope, meaning he said this is why he leaked it, to get a special counsel appointed to target President Trump. Sure enough, a special counsel was appointed by the Justice Department. Rod Rosenstein caved and appointed a special counsel, thanks to these Comey memos being leaked. And the special counsel was Robert Mueller. We all know how that turned out. And Mueller is a friend of James Comey's. You know what was interesting about the Mueller hearing recently? Because the left would have you believe that it was a big lie and conspiracy theory that James Comey and Robert Mueller weren't really friends. They may have worked with each other over the years and been professional colleagues, but they weren't friends. Mueller testified, yes, he was a friend of his. So just remember that fact. So you have this corrupt leaking, theft of documents, it can be argued, leaking of documents. Turns out some of the documents he leaked were almost certainly classified, to get Trump through this special counsel appointment. So all of this confirms the special counsel was and is built on this foundation of corruption. And I've always said, once Mueller learned that this leaking led to his appointment, that was a big test for him in my book. Because if I tell you, if it were me and I found out that there was this arguably criminal act that was calculated to get me my position, I would be like, whoa, you know what? You find some other patsy to do your dirty work for you. I'm not doing it. I'm washing my hands of it. But of course, Mueller was an anti-Trumper too, it's pretty clear. And he was willing to take the corrupt baton handed to him by Comey and harass the president for the next year and a half. So Judicial Watch has been suing in federal court to get access to documents about this Comey corruption, the memos and the handling of them and such. And we've just found, and we've received 6 pages of documents showing that the FBI went over to his home to get government documents, specifically these memos, some of which it looks like were classified. And during the visit, this visit occurred a month after he was fired, so it was June 7th. Comey described to them the memos, said there were memos that were not there, that they did not have either at the FBI or he didn't have. But he didn't talk about his leaking of the memos. And this is important, because when you're not candid with the FBI, you can run into criminal liability. And what I want to do is I want to read the extraordinary FBI documents we received. So this is, I don't know if you can see any of this. So this is usually how we get our documents. There's a cover letter. They send a letter. It's 2 pages telling you why they're withholding material. And in this case, they withheld material on national security grounds. And then they did give you all of the all the notices and descriptions of the exemptions and why they're being withheld. So it's a lot of cover work. And then there are these 6 pages of FBI documents we received. And because it's a Judicial Watch video and we're not constrained by time, I'm going to read you the documents, because you would never otherwise learn about the details of the FBI interview/criminal investigation. I call it a soft raid on James Comey's home. No guns drawn, because he's an anti-Trumper, so there he's protected. The first document, Federal Bureau of Investigation collected item log. I'm going to put on my disguise here. It's dated June 8th, 2017. So this is the day, it looks like the day after he was interviewed. On June 7th, at approximately 10:15 a.m., Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, special agents, and they redact the names of the special agents. I'd like to know their names, but that's another fight. Collected 4 memos as evidence from James Comey at his residence at, and then they redact his address. The memos collected are described as follows. 1 memo dated February 14th, 2017, 2 pages. 1 memo dated March 30th, 2017, 2 pages. 1 memo dated April 11th, 2017, 1 page. 1 memo last night at 6:30 p.m., 4 pages. So that can be either it was written last night at 6:30 p.m. or it was written in another day, and the only notation is last night at 6:30 p.m. And so it's collected, and the documents were then put in, I guess, their evidence box or whatever they want to call it. Next up is this document. Federal Bureau of Investigation documents dated June 16th, so it's about a week after the meeting. And as I called a 302, yeah, so this is a 302. And a 302 is a narrative report created by FBI agents to describe interviews and investigative interviews they have with witnesses and subjects. And I tell you what, in all the history of the FBI, you won't find many documents that relate to an FBI 302 of a former FBI director. It just doesn't happen. It just shows you the level of corruption that Comey was involved in, that he was the subject of an FBI interview. Former FBI Director James Comey was interviewed at his residence at, again redacted. This interview was scheduled in advance, so they gave him a heads up. For the purpose of providing certain classified memos to Comey for review. After being advised that the identity of the interviewing agents and the nature of the interview, Comey provided the following information. After reviewing the memos, Comey spontaneously stated, to the best of his recollection, 2 were missing. In the first occurrence, Comey said at an unknown date and time between January 1st, 2017, which Comey believed was the date of his briefing at the Trump Tower, and Trump's inauguration on January 20th, 2017, Comey received a phone call from President-elect Donald J. Trump. The originating telephone number may have been a New York area code. Following the telephone conversation, Comey drafted and emailed a memo to James Rubicki, top deputy at the FBI, and FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. In the second instance, Comey was on his way to an FBI leadership conference in Leesburg, Virginia, March 9th, 2017, when he was diverted to Liberty Crossing to respond to a request from Trump to contact him. Comey was Comey contacted Trump from Liberty Crossing on a top secret telephone line. The conversation was all business, quotes, all business, and related to blank. And that's a B5 exemption, which is material about pre-decisional, so it's internal communications. Comey is less sure he drafted a memo for this conversation, but if he did, it may have sent it on the FBI's top secret network. Comey observed that the second page of the memo, dated March 30th, 2017, had the incorrect banner line classification of secret non-foreign, meaning no foreign dissemination, rather than unclassified FOUO at the top and bottom of the second page. During the interview at approximately 10:15 a.m., Comey voluntarily provided the interviewing agents 4 memos. Comey had these memos in his possession when he met interviewing agents. The memos collected are described as follows, and these are the memos I talked about earlier. Comey signed an FBI 597 receipt for property, a copy of the FD 597. Oh, that's not, we didn't get that document, was left with Comey. The original, the memos reviewed by Comey and interview notes will be maintained in the 1A section of this case file. The memos provided to Comey for his review had previously been modified to include portion markings, banner lines, and classification authority blocks. After being collected from Comey, the memos were locked securely in a Special Services Administration approved safe located in the FBI headquarters, which is at 935 Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest Washington, D.C. at approximately 2 p.m. the same day. So they took them back and put them in a safe. On Friday, June 9th, the memos were transported and entered into evidence at the FBI Washington Field Office Evidence Control Center. And then here are the notes. Oh wait, we did get the Form 97. Yeah, James Comey signed over the documents here that he should never have had to begin with. So this is all very interesting because you have the FBI going to interview Comey about these classified documents, and it sounds to me like this was some sort of spill team, which is a classified, which is what happens when an agency gets an inkling that classified information has been placed or may have been accessed improperly. So if classified information, quote, spills into unsecure areas, they investigate it. And it sounds to me like Comey was under investigation here. Sure enough, there's a report out this week. It's been confirmed. John Solomon of the Hill first reported it. It's been confirmed by Fox News that the Inspector General of the Justice Department has investigated Comey's mishandling of classified data related to these memos, his handling of the memos, and things like that. And the conclusions reportedly, and I haven't seen the IG report, no one has, at least publicly, and it's not out there publicly yet, is that Comey improperly took the files, he improperly leaked them, the leak included classified information, and he wasn't candid with the FBI agents. Because you'll see in this interview, he doesn't mention that he was sharing these memos or leaking them. It wasn't until the next day that he told Congress that he had done this. So they talk about lack of candor. And you know what lack of candor means? It means lying. And you can lie directly or you can lie through omission. And I haven't seen the report, so I don't know what they mean by lack of candor. But when you have lack of candor with an FBI agent, you can be subject to prosecution. Ask General Flynn how that worked out for him. Ask George Papadopoulos how that worked out for him. So others have been prosecuted for this. And sure enough, according to these published reports, the Inspector General of the Justice Department referred for criminal prosecution James Comey based on his findings in the mishandling of Mr. Trump's FBI files. Yeah, and by the way, these were Trump's FBI files. When you write a memo about a conversation with someone for use of the FBI in an investigation and to keep it for the record, that's someone's FBI file. If he had had a conversation with me and someone else asked for it, they'd say, no, you can't have Tom Fitton's FBI file. It's private. And because it is private, because it is confidential, because it is used in investigations, And because it is sensitive, because it documents allegedly conversations with the President of the United States, you can't use it for your personal use. And you got to keep it secure, especially when it contains classified information, as these documents show they did. And you certainly can't leak them and keep them at your house. So it's no surprise the IG made some type of criminal referral. The surprise is that the Justice Department, run now by Attorney General Barr, has declined to pursue this criminal referral. I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty bad. I don't know the exact reasons for doing so. Supposedly the language is, they said it wasn't even a close call as whether they pursue it. And I see language that he did, quote, didn't have the intent. The intent when he improperly disclosed classified information. That's the Hillary card. Remember that? The laws protecting the classified information, there's a negligence standard. I think it's gross negligence. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't include intent. If it did, you wouldn't be able to protect any classified information, because anyone could walk out the door with classified information, be reading it at the local Starbucks, leave it on the bus, leave it in their car, but because they didn't have the intent to disclose it, there'd be no way to make sure it's been secured or it's kept secured. And they're also saying, well, it wasn't marked classified until they got the documents back and they looked at it and they marked it classified. Well, that's not the law either. That's irrelevant, because documents are either classified or not, irrelevant of the markings. And as an original classification authority, I think the phrase is, as the head of the FBI, his job is to make sure that documents that are classified are secured, whether or not they're marked, because we pay them to recognize classified information. And certainly conversations with the president about sensitive matters, to me, are presumptively classified. And I guarantee you, and I haven't looked at the memos that have been public yet. I mean, I haven't looked at them recently. But based on prior experience, I guarantee you that the FBI underclassified these memos to protect Comey further. So if that's the thinking behind the Barr Justice Department's decision not to prosecute Comey, so that means that the Clinton way is been incorporated into current Justice Department thinking. Now, defenders of this decision say, well, they couldn't make the case here, and don't worry, something big's coming down the pike. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I'm hopeful something big's coming down the pike. I don't know what that big thing is. Now, I know Mr. Durham, the U.S. Attorney from Connecticut, and General Barr are very interested in pursuing these issues. Every time Barr talks about this issue, publicly at least, it's reassuring, at least to me, because he certainly demonstrates an understanding of the grave issues at stake in figuring out what went on with this abuse of the president. But to give a pass to James Comey on his criminal victimization of President Trump is, I don't see any good thing. I can't think of any good thing to say about it. I mean, giving them the benefit of the doubt, there's explanations I don't know about. I haven't seen the IG report. But based on the facts and circumstances I'm aware of, the idea that the FBI director could take someone's FBI files, leak them, get a special counsel appointed who is abusive and a friend of his, lie to FBI agents, quote, with lack of candor, keep this stuff at his home improperly, share classified information illegally, and they decide they don't want to prosecute that because they got bigger cases to pursue. It seems to me that when you have someone admit they leak information that turns out to be classified, that's the very definition of gross negligence required in the statute. And if they're going to do that, and if they're going to give him a pass on that, I don't see how they're going to be able to come up with a more complicated legal theory and a more challenging legal theory to prosecute anyone on the illegal spying, the dishonesty with the FISA courts, and all the other various issues associated with Spygate. Because it may look terribly illegal to you, but under this sort of narrow legal thinking, they won't be able to do anything, or they will choose to do nothing, because there'll be all sorts of excuses that will make this decision not to prosecute Comey seem common sense. Because just think about it from the defense counsel's point of view, and this is what the lawyers in the deep state will be arguing. We can't go after Comey. We can't go after John Brennan. We can't go after these guys who were spying from the FBI on the candidate Trump. They thought the Russians were trying to interfere with the elections. They thought that Trump was in collusion with them. And we can't try to put them in jail over their discretionary deployment of intelligence resources to protect the country from Russian interference on our elections. Do you see what I mean in terms of it being a complicated case in light of that type of discussion? Now, I think all of that falls apart upon analysis. But I'm concerned that there's some willing ears in the Justice Department when faced with that type of analysis, and they'll just say, you're right. Remember, the challenge here, and it's kind of, this is Exhibit A, you're asking the Justice Department to prosecute itself. And Attorney General Barr could be the greatest man in the world, but the whole system is geared to stopping that from happening. Let alone CIA officials or State Department officials, or, I mean, the fact that Peter Strzok is still walking around, to me, tells you is a bad sign. So, I mean, does it mean we should lose all hope? No, 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 no. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and I think that this decision not to prosecute Comey can be reversed. I think the American people should let their views known about this. It doesn't mean that the mob rules. But the public interest demands that the Justice Department take this crime more seriously. Because the implication in defending this decision out of the Justice Department is this is low-rent stuff. I don't consider it to be low rent. Do you? Stealing President Trump's FBI files and leaking them to get a harassing special counsel against him to try to throw him out of the presidency? I consider that a pretty big deal. Mishandling classified information in order to get him. And I tell you what, when you tie this misconduct, whatever the prosecution, irrespective of the prosecution decision now, you've got this IG report that calls it misconduct. When you tie it up with the other actions that Comey took in terms of his decision-making to spy on a presidential campaign, mislead the FISA courts, to put it charitably, it's all part of a piece. I would make this all part of the case. So I don't like the decision. I think it's reversible. And I think it almost will have to be reconsidered if they truly are serious about pursuing Comey. And I know you're frustrated. I'm frustrated too. I don't break stuff when I'm here, but I know what you mean. It's frustrating. But all we can do is what we can do. The Justice Department is what it is, and I tell you, that's why we have Judicial Watch. Because the Justice Department, even if it wants to do the right thing, the good guys there just don't do it. Or what may seem like the right thing just literally can't be done for legal reasons that only lawyers will pretend to understand. And this is why it's important to have Judicial Watch doing the heavy lifting that we do. Dozens of lawsuits. We get this information on Comey's misconduct from the FBI, showing that that they had to go to his house to talk about the mishandling of classified information. They're in the middle of the interview. He shows up, well, I've got these other memos. You want them too? This document shows the FBI was negligent, to put it mildly, in maintaining the security of President Trump's sensitive FBI files that are protected by law. That Comey was malicious in taking them, dishonest in not telling the FBI about them, and certainly, based on the IG report and everything we know about the rule of law, committed a crime in leaking them. And that the whole special counsel operation is compromised as a result of the links to Comey. That came out not because of the Justice Department, not because of Congress, but because of Judicial Watch's litigation. So the Justice Department's going to do what it does, or it's not going to do what it should do. Whatever happens, Judicial Watch is always going to try to get the truth and accountability with the tools that we have available to us under our glorious Constitution and under our legal system. So this week, Judicial Watch uncovered a crime while the DOJ evidently is trying to cover it up. And so I'm happy to be working at Judicial Watch. Frustrating DOJ doesn't do its job, but that's not new, is it? And I can't predict the future, but I've been using this line often. You know, you've heard on the radio, I'm sure, commercials, or on television commercials for financial products, where they say, invest in this, invest in that, you should buy this financial product. And always at the end of the commercial, there's this warning. And you probably see them on materials for financial services or investment opportunities. Past results is not an indication of future performance. It doesn't guarantee future performance. And I think that's pretty good advice for investing, don't you think? Just because a stock did well in the past doesn't mean it's going to do well in the future. It's no guarantee. But it's actually the opposite for politics. Past performance is an indication of future results. So what's happened in the past in politics often will just continue to happen. And why Trump is is so hated by the deep state because he's an X factor who can break that cycle. He fired Comey, for instance. That would never have been thought. No regular Republican would have ever dared fire Comey. But Trump saw a corrupt FBI director who was corruptly protecting Hillary Clinton, being dishonest with him, and he fired him. And then you have the X factor of Judicial Watch, who's getting this information out to bring public pressure to bear on our elected and appointed officials to do their jobs. And if they don't do their jobs, at least the documents we have out there confirm and get better confirm the truth, further the truth, and give us an element of accountability that otherwise would never have existed.